The prettiest girl in class quickly pulled down her skirt. The girl in the short skirt suddenly realized her classmates might have just gotten an eyeful. The nerdy guy with glasses swallowed hard in fascination, then noticed she was actually waving to him in greeting, but he still couldn't pull himself together. The prettiest girl had no choice but to tug her skirt lower again. This was just an ordinary senior class in a Korean high school, but starting today, their lives would no longer be ordinary. Just then, the chubby kid by the window noticed several military trucks driving straight into the school. He quickly called his classmates over to look, only to see a group of fully armed soldiers stepping out of the vehicles. Something big was clearly about to happen. While everyone was still confused, the squad leader gave them a stern look, announcing that they were taking full control of the school under orders. It turned out that a year ago, hundreds of mysterious orbs had suddenly appeared over South Korea. People thought it was an alien invasion. The terrifying sight looked like the end of the world, so the Korean government decided to strike first, launching attacks on those strange spheres. But the strikes didn't destroy them. Instead, they caused the orbs to multiply rapidly. Soon the spheres spread all over the world. Humanity no longer dared to act rashly. Yet the orbs never did anything to harm humans, so in this uneasy balance, people quietly coexisted with the orbs for a year until an unexpected event broke the peace. 2 weeks ago, one of the orbs over South Korea suddenly crashed to the ground. The military quickly moved in and sealed off the area to find out what was inside the orbs. The commander opened fire on an orb with his machine gun. After emptying several clips of bullets, they still couldn't scratch it at all. He then ordered soldiers to attack with rocket launchers. The massive blasts kicked up huge clouds of dust. When the explosion smoke cleared, people saw the orb's interior flickering with an eerie purple light and heard strange roaring sounds. It seemed some kind of creature had been successfully awakened. After the incident, the defense minister immediately issued a nationwide mobilization order and declared the country in a state of emergency. All citizens aged 24 and older and every senior year high school student were ordered to enlist in the military. In the military's view, if they offered the rule that joining the draft would give extra points on the college entrance exam, all seniors would fight tooth and nail for that chance. The moment the announcement was made, the classroom erupted into chaos. No one could believe the news. Are we really going to war? How long will the training last? Who are we even supposed to fight? From the students' questions, it was clear the Ministry of Defense had been hiding the fact that the orbs had begun attacking people. Before the students could fully process the news, soldiers had already entered the classroom. Instructor Lee gave a brief self-introduction, then explained the training schedule for the coming weeks. The class would be led by the class president. In the corner, Ji Ryol was chosen to be the daily record keeper. Both would receive an extra 3 points on their college entrance exam. Meanwhile, the prettiest girl in class, Ju Yun, couldn't stop staring at Instructor Lee, her eyes filled with admiration. Clearly, some students still thought this was just a regular military camp and didn't take it seriously at all. Soon they were assigned dorm rooms. Boys and girls each stayed in an empty classroom. A few mischievous boys tried to tease the instructor while the girls turned their dorm into a makeup room. Their behavior still showed the childish side of being students. Every afternoon after class, they had to train on the field. Each student was issued a firearm, and all the training weapons were real guns. Addicted to battle royale games, they first thought it was all fun and exciting, but after endless rounds of intense physical drills, everyone grew tired and resistant. After training, when they returned to the dorm, the pampered girls lay sprawled over their desks complaining non-stop. The school was now under full lockdown. No one was allowed to leave without permission. That night, the school bully, who hadn't turned in his phone, found a video online showing soldiers shooting lions and tigers at a zoo. Everyone looked horrified after watching it. The chubby kid then said he'd heard that killing wild beasts was a sign that war was about to begin. His words instantly stirred up even more heated discussions, making it impossible for the top student nearby to focus on studying. Just then, Instructor Lee walked in, catching the top student right as he was about to step outside. The student complained that the noise was ruining his college prep and reported the bully for secretly keeping a phone. From that moment on, the two became sworn enemies and were about to start a fight right then and there. Instructor Lee saw what was happening and called them outside. As punishment, he made them take out the trash. But on the way, they started arguing again. Ji Ryol, who was following behind, quickly stepped in to calm them down. Yet right at that moment, one of the orbs in the sky suddenly fell. The three of them were thrown to the ground by the impact. Staring at the orb so close to them, they were completely stunned. But then, the two who couldn't stand each other started fighting again. The top student was shoved to the ground, but just then, the orb behind him began to move, shifting from a round shape into a tentacled monster. The creature lifted the top student into the air with its tendrils. Ji Ryol and the bully froze in fear. They could only watch helplessly as their classmate struggled until he was completely swallowed whole. Just as the monster was about to attack Ji Ryol, Instructor Lee arrived just in time to save him. The creature turned back into a sphere, falling silent again. Still in shock, the two were taken to the military base that same night. the commander warned them to keep everything a secret. They were absolutely forbidden from telling anyone what had happened. The situation was too critical now. Any panic could make things worse. When they returned to the dorm, their classmates immediately asked what had happened. They could only lie and say the top student had taken leave and gone home. The two sat on their beds afterward, unable to calm down. Little did they know, humanity's true nightmare was only just beginning. Over the next few days, the students continued their regular training as planned, until one day, the instructors suddenly received an urgent order from above. They were ordered to, in the shortest time, teach these students how to use firearms. It seemed the situation was more urgent than expected, so the students' next training focused on taking guns apart, putting guns back together and how to shoot steadily. Nero and some other gifted students quickly picked up the skills. Ju Yun, who didn't want to disappoint Instructor Lee, also showed big improvement. After a round of brutal, hellish drills, the students had gained a basic understanding of how to handle weapons. Next, they would head to the range for live fire practice, but this very operation almost cost the students their lives. Walking along the street, the students found the area was strangely quiet. They didn't even see a single person. Instructor Lee told them to stay silent. Actually, long before the disaster hit, the city's residents had been moved by the government to safe evacuation shelters. The group kept moving toward the range, unbeknownst to them, in a nearby parking lot. At some unknown time, an orb had already fallen to the ground. When they arrived at the range, the instructor told them ordinary bullets would not affect their future enemy. Only a special round called Diu could kill them. Before the students could even ask who the enemy was, they were all pulled aside and made to start shooting. Meanwhile, Jirail was heavy with worry. He couldn't stop thinking about that night, when his classmate was killed by the monster, until Nero, the girl he secretly liked, came up to check on him. Her concern finally pulled him back to his senses. They spent the entire day practicing free shooting. Most of them had now grasped the basics of aiming and firing. On the way back, Instructor Lee noticed something strange around them. There were bullet holes scattered all over the street. He immediately stopped the group, telling everyone to rest in place for 10 minutes while he and a few other instructors went ahead to investigate. But before long, the homeroom teacher realized 2 students were missing. She quickly took the class president to look for them nearby. Then the president spotted a gun lying on the ground. When she picked it up, she saw a severed hand still clinging to it. She screamed in shock, completely breaking down. The teacher and students heard the noise, and when they came over to look, everyone was horrified by the sight. The teacher saw the ground littered with blood-stained shoes. She stood up, trying to step forward for a closer look, but Jirail grabbed her arm, warning that it might be dangerous. Still, the teacher insisted on finding out what had happened to her students. She slowly walked forward, step by step. Jirail couldn't hold it in anymore and revealed the truth about the top student's death. Right then, the teacher saw the field ahead covered with bodies. She screamed for everyone to run. A horde of monsters was charging straight toward them. The teacher grabbed a gun and started shooting. But it was already too late. There were just too many of them. The students were frozen in terror by the sight before them. Not until the homeroom teacher was impaled by a monster's tentacle did they truly realize how dangerous the outside world had become. Hearing the commotion, one of the instructors rushed over, yelling for the students to run, but after firing just a few shots, the monster lashed out with its tendrils and sliced off his head on the spot. Watching 2 people die right in front of them, the students finally snapped out of it and scattered in panic. More monsters were charging at them from behind. Some of the students hid inside a nearby building, but horrifyingly, the monsters had already invaded it too, just as one of them lunged at the students. Instructor Lee arrived just in time to provide cover. Meanwhile, on the other side of the building, 2 monsters had wrapped their tentacles tightly around the student's legs. His friends pulled with all their strength to stop him from being dragged away. At the critical moment, Instructor Hyuk fired his gun and took down the monsters, successfully saving them. But outside the building, 2 female students were still being hunted by a pack of monsters. In desperation, they ducked into a phone booth. The glass door temporarily kept the creatures at bay, but in their panic, they accidentally pressed the emergency alarm button. The siren blared instantly, drawing every nearby monster toward them. Under the force of the creatures pounding, cracks began spreading across the glass. As more monsters swarmed in, the girls shut their eyes in despair. Suddenly, gunfire erupted. It was Instructor Lee he'd found where they were. As the gunfire kept flashing from the muzzles, the monsters around them were mostly cleared out. The instructor stepped forward, ready to take the 2 away, but didn't notice another creature hiding above. Just as the monster lunged down, Nare arrived in time and shot it dead. All those days of harsh training had finally paid off. But there was no time to rest. Their top priority now was to find the other missing students. Meanwhile, the group that ran to the parking garage was also under attack. A monster used its tentacles to trip one student to the ground, then pounced straight onto his face. The boy grabbed its tentacle and screamed for his classmates to shoot, but the 2 boys next to him were so terrified their minds went completely blank. In that crucial moment, They even forgot how to fire a gun. Thankfully, the calm and composed Ju-Yun stepped up, firing a perfect shot that hit the creature dead on, ending the danger for now. As for the two students everyone had been searching for at first, they had secretly slipped away and snuck into a nearby supermarket, completely unaware of what was happening outside, when a monster appeared in front of them. They had no clue what it was and foolishly tried to reach out and touch it. As expected, the monster suddenly lunged forward at them. Luckily, a gun in front of them blocked the attack just in time. Little did they know the soft-looking creature before them was actually a demon that fed on human flesh. The monster went on a wild chase after the two inside the store. At the last second, the boy swung open a freezer door to block its strike. Then they took the chance to trap the monster inside. The creature that had been raging just moments ago was now slowly growing still until it finally stopped moving. Not long after, the surviving students regrouped, but their first encounter with a monster had already cost them several classmates. The experience completely shattered their courage. At that moment, Instructor Lee revealed the real reason behind their training. If the day ever came when the entire army was wiped out, they would become the last line of defense to protect their homeland. Just as he finished speaking, a strange noise came from behind. The instructor signaled the students to be on guard, then went ahead to check it out himself, telling the students to stay put and to open fire immediately if it was a monster. As he slowly approached, Instructor Lee saw that it was actually people and shouted not to shoot, to cease fire immediately. But gunfire still erupted. A short-haired girl, terrified out of her mind, had pulled the trigger. It turned out the newcomers were the two students who had gone missing earlier. Fortunately, no one was hit, but when they returned to the school, none of them seemed to have their old energy anymore. Students from other classes stared at them with puzzled eyes. Having no idea what they'd gone through, back in the classroom, the group filed a collective request to refuse orders. They were just students preparing for college entrance exams, not soldiers ready to die in battle. Every student in class voted in agreement except for the guy with glasses, who voiced his objection. It turned out he couldn't bear to lose the chance to earn bonus points on the college exam. Scared to die, he wanted everyone to stay with him. The class bully saw that and kicked him hard. Then a girl who wanted to go home dropped to her knees and begged. Only then did the guy with glasses finally give in. So the class president went to Instructor Lee, submitting everyone's request to go home, but Instructor Lee gave them a firm reply, saying that even if they went home, they wouldn't see their parents. The government had already evacuated everyone outside to shelters. Now their status was officially military personnel. They had to stay at school for further training. Hearing this, everyone was on the verge of breaking down. But they refused to believe their parents had really been relocated. They thought it was just an excuse to keep them there. If honesty didn't work, then they'd try something sneaky. A few boys decided to sneak out under the cover of night. But within 2 minutes, they were all caught and dragged back. The entire class got punished along with them, yet even that didn't crush their desire to escape. The next day, they started spreading panic among students from other classes, telling them terrifying stories about what they'd seen outside, stirring up the others to join their rebellion. Soon, the school's security barricades were about to be overrun. But right at that moment, one of the orbs in the sky suddenly crashed down into the schoolyard. The massive impact sent everyone tumbling to the ground. As they looked toward the center of the smoke, the orb was pulsating like a beating heart. Realizing something was wrong, the instructor raised his gun and stepped forward. When he was still about 10 meters away, Instructor Lee heard a creature's deep, guttural roar from ahead. He screamed at the students to run for their lives. But it was already too late. Soon, a huge swarm of monsters crawled out of the orb, charging straight toward the crowd. There were so many of them, even bullets couldn't stop their advance. It wasn't until they saw the instructor killed by a monster with their own eyes that the students finally panicked and ran for their lives. Most of them had never seen such creatures before. In an instant, the campus turned into a living hell. Both students and instructors were slaughtered without mercy. Some had their limbs ripped off, others were impaled through the body. The instructors fought desperately to cover the students' retreat, falling one after another under the onslaught. But the worst part came when a second orb fell right after. Seeing the situation spiral out of control, the highest-ranking officer on site chose to abandon the students, trying to escape alone by car. But the next second, a monster leapt onto his windshield, making him lose control and flip the vehicle. In the end, he couldn't escape death either. The scene grew more and more chaotic. Even the fearless class bully was paralyzed with fear at the sight before him, while most students were fleeing in terror. One girl named Nare showed an entirely different side of herself. She picked up a fallen rifle from the ground and precisely gunned down several monsters. Instructor Lee was still fighting hard to protect the evacuating students, but more orbs kept crashing down from the sky. Thankfully, most of the students managed to hide inside the school building. They quickly stacked desks and chairs to block the entrance. the outside was now completely overrun by monsters. It was only a matter of time before they broke through. Under the instructor's direction, they hurried back to the dorms, grabbing all their weapons. Now they could no longer stay at the school. They had no choice but to run full speed toward the 2 military trucks outside. That was their only hope to survive. Quickly, Instructor Lee and the other instructor rushed out, opening fire to provide suppressing cover. The students heard the signal and moved fast, splitting into 2 teams as planned. One by one they climbed onto the trucks in an orderly way. Now they were the only survivors left at school. Hearing the noise, the monsters surged toward them. One girl suddenly panicked. She stared at the plane that had been shot down in the sky, standing there in stunned despair. Time was running out now. After Instructor Lee handed his hand to a student on the truck, he had to go start the truck, but when she was about to climb up, she slipped and fell down, twisting her ankle. Unaware, Instructor Lee had already started the truck. The students on the truck reached out desperately to grab their classmate. Unfortunately, the next second, a monster knocked the girl down. Seeing this, Instructor Lee tried to get out to save her but was stopped by the arriving other instructor. If they didn't leave now, all the students would die here. Instructor Lee had no choice. He could only watch helplessly as the students were torn apart by monsters. Now the campus was left with nothing but countless monsters. No living humans remained to be seen. However, it wasn't just the school that was ravaged by the monsters. The entire city of Seoul had fallen under the orb's invasion. It was as if humanity's doomsday had arrived. The few who survived could only head toward the military base since that was the only place still considered safe. But at some point, a monster had crawled into the driver's seat of truck number 2, causing the vehicle to lose control and flip over. The creature kept crawling toward the back of the truck. The students inside panicked and opened fire in a frenzy, finally killing the monster. But then they realized all the instructors in the cab were already dead, and Ju-Yun's abdomen had been slashed during the crash, leaving her too weak to reach the destination. Dusk was falling fast. Their ammo had completely run out, so the group decided to find a nearby shelter for the night. Meanwhile, the truck driven by Instructor Lee successfully reached the military base. When truck number 2 never showed up, he was certain something bad had happened, so he requested permission from the commander to drive back and search for them. But the heartless commander had no intention of rescuing those students. He warned that if Instructor Lee acted on his own, he'd be executed on the spot. These were students who were supposed to be preparing for their college exams. Yet before the test, they had all written their wills. The monster's invasion left the nation in ruins, forcing senior students to fight on the battlefield. During one sudden attack, the group of students got separated in the chaos. They found a small house to rest for a while, but now, they were running low on food. One of their teammates was badly injured. Luckily, after searching the house, they found a first aid kit and some clean water. A girl with glasses discovered a pack of instant noodles in the kitchen, but she didn't tell anyone, choosing instead to sneak outside and eat it alone. She figured if they shared it, no one would get enough, so it was better for one person to eat and be full. After finishing, just as the girl was about to leave, she spotted a monster in the distance staring right at her. Terrified, she screamed at the top of her lungs and ran back as fast as she could. Her teammates heard the noise and rushed out to help her. But by now, they had completely run out of bullets, so they had no choice but to hide inside the house. When the monster couldn't break in through the door, it started climbing up to the roof. It seemed to have developed some intelligence, knowing how to crawl in through the chimney. Jirail noticed movement from the chimney and quickly shouted for everyone to move. They all rushed from the living room to the bedroom while the monster kept slamming against the door outside. Meanwhile, Instructor Lee ignored his superior's orders and decided to drive back to search for the missing students. When the students at the base heard about it, many volunteered to go with him. Only the timid guy with glasses chose to stay behind. Back at the house, the students had been hiding all night. The monster showed no signs of leaving, but then they noticed Ju-Yun's wound was getting infected. Her fever was rising fast. The situation was critical. They had to go find help. Jirail suggested running to the nearby warehouse and using the truck inside to get out of there. Everyone agreed with his plan. But now they faced a big problem. The monster was blocking the door. How were they supposed to get out? Jirail, being the thinner one, volunteered to climb out through the window first and see if he could find something to pry the window open from outside. He then carefully made his way to the warehouse, but the monster still heard the noise and followed Jirail all the way there. Just as Jirail grabbed a wrench and was about to leave, he spotted the creature in the truck's rearview mirror and sprinted back faster than he ever had in his life. When he returned to the room, the monster had already crawled in through the chimney into the living room. That's when they realized the monster seemed extremely sensitive to sound, so before making their next move, they slid a CD into the DVD player and turned the volume all the way up to lure the creature into staying in the living room. Soon everyone climbed out through the window. Just as they were heading toward the warehouse, the DVD player suddenly malfunctioned. The monster heard the noise outside and shot out through the chimney. Everyone ran for their lives toward the warehouse, managing to slam the door shut at the very last second, but when Hirak tried to start the truck, He realized it was a manual transmission and he didn't know how to drive it. A girl beside him said she could, but Hirak didn't believe her. During their struggle over the keys, they flew into the corner of the room, but it was too far away. Jiraiya reached out but couldn't grab them. At the same time, the students noticed a monster was trying to break in through the ceiling. In this desperate moment, one boy suggested abandoning the injured Ju Yun, saying at least the rest of them still had a chance to run. Everyone fell silent after hearing that. No one could bring themselves to leave a friend behind. Then the boy offered a less cruel idea. Someone could go out and distract the monster while the others escaped during the chaos. The group agreed to that plan. They decided to draw lots. Whoever pulled the shortest stick would go lure the creature away. Soon everyone revealed their sticks, but Hirak hesitated to show his. Seeing that, Jiangsu snapped his own stick in half and stepped forward. Looks like it's me. Only Hirak knew that the one who actually drew the shortest stick was himself. Jiangsu went out banging hard on a metal barrel to make noise, quickly drawing the monster's attention away. The others seized the moment to grab the keys and drive off. Jiangsu watched the truck successfully pull away, letting out a sigh of relief, but the monster soon caught up, cornering him with nowhere left to run, just as he was about to accept his fate. Hirak appeared. He hadn't left Jiangsu behind after all. He remembered that the monster feared the cold and used a liquid nitrogen sprayer to freeze it to death. But as the two turned to leave, another monster lunged straight at them. Fortunately, Instructor Lee arrived just in time to save them. Nare fired her gun with perfect aim and killed the monster. After going through countless hardships, they were finally rescued. The group reunited once again. Back at the base, everyone grew much closer. Even the class bully had softened his attitude when the higher-ups learned that Instructor Lee had acted without orders. They didn't punish him because he had brought the kids back safely, giving both the parents and his superiors some peace of mind. In the days that followed, the students only went through light training each day. Just when they thought life would finally calm down, bad news came from the military. The army had received intelligence that aside from DU rounds, the United Nations was developing an ultra-low temperature bomb capable of killing the monsters, but it hadn't yet gone into mass production. Meanwhile, the army had already lost more than half its forces fighting the monsters. One general suggested waiting until winter came before launching an attack, but that instantly enraged the commander, who shouted that by then, everyone would already be dead. So he ordered that the students be sent directly to the front lines to fight the monsters. Otherwise, what's the point of training those student soldiers? After confirming the plan, the commander brought Instructor Lee to face the students, to inform them about the upcoming battle mission. Hearing that they would be sent to the battlefield tomorrow, the students couldn't believe it. Instructor Lee felt torn inside, but he had no choice but to obey the orders. Back in the dorms, no one was in the mood anymore. They could only write their farewell letters as instructed. At least it gave them some sense of closure. Later that night, Instructor Lee joined them for dinner. These were the students he had personally trained. Even he didn't know what awaited them tomorrow or how many would make it back alive. The students were divided into two small squads for the operation. Each squad leader was given a detector that could locate monsters. Soon they reached the city center. The area was in ruins with no sign of human life anywhere. They moved cautiously down the street, then suddenly, the detectors started beeping, showing dozens of signals ahead. A massive horde of monsters was approaching fast. Instructor Lee immediately ordered everyone to get ready for battle. The students quickly took cover and prepared to fight. Instructor Lee tossed a toy car forward on the ground. The sound it made instantly drew the monsters' attention. They started pouring out from the surrounding apartment buildings, wave after wave, endless and relentless. When the creatures entered their best shooting range, Instructor Lee gave the order to open fire. The students worked together, firing fiercely. Their shooting skills had grown sharper through days of intense training. They managed to suppress the monsters charging in from all directions, but right in the middle of the fierce battle, something strange happened. These fearless creatures suddenly learned how to hide as if they were following some kind of command. While everyone stood there in confusion, a monster moving at lightning speed suddenly rushed in from behind. Even the bullets couldn't keep up with its movement speed. The students were terrified by that creature. Thankfully, the calm and steady Instructor Lee timed it perfectly, firing several rounds and taking the monster down. But then two other creatures pushed something off the building above, trying to crush the students below. Now it seemed these things had developed intelligence. After that, the students split into pairs, hunting down monsters in the streets and alleys. Nero acted as the sniper, providing cover fire for his teammates from the rooftop. After a brutal fight, they reached another school and decided to spend the night there. Suddenly, Instructor Lee gathered everyone together and told them about his decision. From what they'd seen today, the number of monsters in the city was far too many. He could no longer guarantee the students' safety. so at first light tomorrow, he decided he'd take everyone back to the base. Meanwhile, Nero and Jiriol were keeping watch on the rooftop. Jiriol wanted to take this quiet moment alone to confess his feelings. Just as he gathered his courage, Nero suddenly noticed something unusual in the distance. A monster appeared nearly a kilometer away. It was beyond the detector's scanning range. The creature and the sphere in the sky began to glow with an eerie light together as if they were communicating with each other. They immediately reported it to Instructor Lee. Based on Nero's observation, the monster and the orb had been lingering in that same spot. When Instructor Lee saw the location, he instantly realized that was exactly where the government's newly built shelter was located. It was obvious the monsters on the ground were guiding the spheres in the sky. That place would be their next target, but Instructor Lee said they'd still stick to the plan and evacuate tomorrow. This situation was simply beyond what they could handle. The students knew Instructor Lee was only worried about their safety, but this time, they refused to run away. They believed their parents might be inside that shelter right now. They wanted to stay and wipe out the monsters to protect their families. Seeing their determination, Instructor Lee felt deeply moved. After a long night of discussion, they made their decision. At sunrise tomorrow, they would launch their plan to eliminate the monsters. Using the traditional way to hunt down the monsters would be far too slow. So they decided to use their current school as the explosion point to lure all the monsters in and wipe them out at once. The students then split into groups and began their tasks. Some were in charge of gathering as many of the bombs left behind by the military as they could find. They tied the bombs together with DU bullets and spaced them out every 10 meters, placing them throughout every corner of the school building. Another group was responsible for finding anything that could make noise while a few others went up to the rooftop to keep watch on the monsters' movements. Just halfway through setting up the bombs, the students on the rooftop noticed the monsters were already moving toward the shelter. Instructor Lee had no choice but to give the order to start early. The students on cue turned on the school's broadcast system while those downstairs triggered the car alarms. Instantly, the loud noise echoed through the entire city. Hearing the commotion, the monsters began surging toward the school in huge numbers. But the explosives still weren't fully set. Instructor Lee took over the work from a student, exchanging a look with Instructor Hyuk, telling him to lead the students to the rendezvous point first while he stayed behind to finish the setup, but the students refused. They couldn't bear to abandon Instructor Lee, who was like family to them. Yet faced with his furious shout, they had no choice but to trust him and leave. Soon after, more and more monsters came charging toward the school. Even a giant one appeared among them. It was the one commanding the entire swarm. Not long after, the students gathered at the designated meeting point, watching the monsters storming into the campus in packs. They couldn't help but worry about Instructor Lee. By now, the monsters had already entered the school building. Instructor Lee had just finished setting up the bombs, but as he was about to leave, he saw the monsters charging up the stairs toward him. He immediately ran toward the staircase on the other side, only to find that way blocked too. More creatures crawling down from above. With nowhere left to run, Instructor Lee turned back the way he came. Outside, the giant monster continued sending signals, directing the others to rush inside the building. Realizing he was completely cornered and his bullets were all gone, with no other choice left, Instructor Lee hid inside a classroom for the moment. He went to the window and looked down. Jumping from here was clearly impossible. Meanwhile, the others grew anxious when he never showed up. Just then, the walkie-talkie came on. It was Instructor Lee giving the order to detonate the bombs. He claimed he'd already escaped, but Ji-Yun immediately saw through the lie. So Instructor Lee stopped pretending. He admitted he had no way out, but if they didn't detonate the bombs now, everything they'd done would have been for nothing. Didn't you promise us? Didn't you say you'd protect us till the very end? But you broke that promise. As an adult, you dragged us into this war. Please don't die. This is the squad leader's final order. Detonate the bombs now. After a painful moment of hesitation, even though it broke their hearts, they still pressed the detonation button.